Hey, thanks for watching Top Class Tutorials. I'm Travis, and in this video I'm going to show you how I set up a session when working with tracked out beats or beat stems. I'll be using Pro Tools, but this applies to other audio workstations as well. So if you're new to music production or to Pro Tools, you may not understand these settings, so I'm going to explain each of these real quick. I'll name my session. So the first important setting is sample rate, which determines how many times your audio is sampled per second when recording and importing audio. So this means audio is getting sampled 44,100 times per second. So the best way to understand sample rate is to think about how a camera works. Cameras work by capturing light and creating a photo. Video cameras take multiple photos per second and then when played back in order, create a video. Imagine someone jumping on a trampoline and you take a video with your phone. When you look at the video, you'll be able to see where the person is, and that's the same way audio works with sample rate. The standard for audio is 44.1 kilohertz, and for video, it's 48 kilohertz. Some studios record at 96, but that can cause issues with certain computers, and it takes up a lot of hard drive space, more than double. The next setting is bit depth. So computers weren't as smart back then and information could only be stored in binary code with a length of 8 or 12 characters, also known as 8-bit or 12-bit. Pretend you want to sell your car online, but you can only upload 2 photos of your car. The buyer might not like the car because of the limited information. Audio works the same way, so the higher the bit depth means the more information you have about the audio. The standard is 24-bit, but you can use 32-bit also. So let's go ahead and create our session. We'll name it. Okay, now we got Pro Tools open. So the first thing I want to do is import my audio tracks for my session. I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Command-Shift-I, and this window will pop up. So I'll navigate to my folder with my audio files, and you want to make sure you use the WAV audio. Don't use MP3, it's not as good of quality. So I'll just click this one and then holding down Shift, select this one to select them all, and select Convert. If you have audio that's recorded at a different sample rate, this will automatically be selected. So you want to make sure you do that. So we'll go ahead and hit import. So this window will pop up and you want to make sure you have new track and session start selected here. Press OK. All right, so let me make everything smaller so you can see everything. Okay. So once everything is imported, I'll go ahead and create a master fader using the keyboard shortcut Command-Shift-N and then making sure stereo and master are selected. Each program is different when creating a master fader, but they all have the same function, which is to control and monitor the volume of everything playing in your session. So now I'm going to insert a limiter on the master fader to prevent any clipping. And what clipping is when audio exceeds 0 dB threshold in the digital domain and it just gets cut off. So I'll demonstrate what that looks like here in a second. So first thing I'll do is set my ceiling to around -1 dB. Next, I'll play the track and set my levels, and I'll demonstrate what clipping is by turning the limiter on and off.
Trust me.
So I'm not sure if you could hear the difference, but when I had the limiter turned off, you could clearly hear that the signal was being cut off and had this kind of crunchy digital kind of distortion to it. So next I'm going to select all these tracks and then put them in a group by using the keyboard shortcut Command G. So once this window is open, go ahead and name your group. I'll name this All Beat. And there are a couple different types of groups you can make. Edit will contain edit functions, mix will contain mix functions, and mix/edit will contain both. I typically use both and just turn all the groups on or off using the keyboard shortcut Command-Shift-G. So I'll press OK, and now that my group's created, I'll go to my mix window by using the keyboard shortcut Command-Equal. If you don't see your groups, you just select this little button right here and it'll open it up for you, and you'll see our beat group that we just made. And you can tell it's active because it's got a gray selection bar around it. So now that we have all of our tracks in a group, you'll see when I move one fader, they all move together. And this is very helpful when trying to speed up your workflow. So I noticed this track that says master on it. And typically this is a copy of the original mix. This will be helpful when we start mixing later, but let's mute it for now. I'll select the track and right click and select Make Inactive. That will deactivate the track so nothing will play on it even if it's unmuted. So the next thing I want to do is start going through these tracks one by one and mixing them together. Because these tracks are in a group, if I mute one, they all get muted together. Next, I'll turn off the All Beat group, and then I'll demonstrate Command-Shift-G turns the groups on and off. So I like to start with the kick drum and then go from there. So to make it easier to work, I'm going to first hide this clip gain line, and then I'm going to make all of the tracks bigger. And then I'm also going to make the waveforms bigger so I can see more of what's going on. Okay, a little reverse cymbal. Okay, a little glitch effect there. That's pretty cool. All right, I think this is his voice tag. Okay, now I think I'm going to start moving some of these tracks around to get them a little bit closer to other instruments, like putting all the drums together, the synths, the effects, things like that. So I'll go ahead and move these tracks together. I will move this track here. Then I think I'll put this track. I'll mute that for now. Select these and put these in a group called drums. And now in our group window, you can see we have two groups, all beat and drums. And drums is active because it has a gray bar around it. And if we go to our mix window, you can see our drum faders now move together. If we had all beat turned on, they would all move again together, but we don't want that right now, so we'll leave this turned off. So now I'm going to start putting these tracks into a different type of group called a submix group, also known as a aux bus. So with all my tracks selected, I'm going to hold down Option Shift and select the output. And then I'm going to select New Track. This window should pop up, and I'm going to make sure that I have stereo, aux input selected, and then I'm going to rename this drums. And now we have a aux input with all of our drums routed to it. So I forgot to add the open hat to the drum group, and that's okay because it's really easy to add things to the aux. You just basically move it where you want and then select the output, and you can type in drums and you'll see your stereo aux, and it automatically routes it directly. So it's super easy as long as you just name it. So the next thing I want to do is color these tracks. So I'll select all of my drum tracks, and then I will double click on the color plate and my color palette will show up, and I'll just color these red. You can do whatever color you want. Another thing that you can do to make it easier is if you go to Setup and Preferences, and underneath the default clip color coding, if you select track color, it will change all of your clips to the same color as your track color, which makes it really helpful to quickly identify what is what in your session. So the next thing I'm going to do is go through the rest of these tracks and just color code and organize them. So I think I'm going to put the tag in an effects subgroup. So I'll move that up here with all the other effects. I'll move this over here. I'll need it later. And I'll select all my tracks. So that one effect kind of sounds like a reverse cymbal, but because it does that kind of fade off, I'm kind of going to label it as an effect more than a drum sample. And I'll color this purple. And same thing with my track selected, hold down Option Shift, stereo aux, name it effects, enter, and everything is routed. And let's just double check. Okay, so sounds like everything is routed correctly. And just from looking at these labels, I think I'm going to put all this stuff together. Okay, so I think I'm going to put that listen with the effects. And same thing, I just select the output and type in effects. And it will show up, hit enter, and it routes it. I'll just make sure I have the track selected and then go to my color palette and make it the same color as everything else. Now I'll go back down here and I'll go ahead and select these tracks, hold down Option Shift, new track, stereo aux, rename this synths. And also it will create the aux underneath the track that you click on, if that makes sense. So I'll just move this down here. It's not a big deal. Everything is routed correctly and we'll just double check that. Okay, everything's routed correctly. So I'm going to make everything smaller so we can see it and go ahead and unmute these tracks. And typically what I'll do with the 808 track is just create a individual aux bus just for itself. And I didn't mean to color both. Color this one purple, bluish. Okay. So now I will move this down to where my drums are. Usually I put it next to the kick, just because the kick usually just goes right with the 808. I'm constantly working on them when I'm trying to EQ them and make them fit in the mix together. So it just makes it convenient to have the kick and the 808 like right next to each other. So now I think I'm going to play it back a couple times and just kind of adjust the levels with everything playing as a whole. I'll deactivate my drum group so I can move stuff around. So now I think I'm going to add the 808. Okay, so if you remember the track from earlier that we made inactive, I'm going to make that active again, and I'm going to compare my mix to the original mix. So I want to make sure I have this track soloed, and then I'll turn the volume down and play it back. And now I'll play my version. So the first thing that I notice is the beat's a little bit louder, and it's also a little bit brighter. So before I start doing that, I first want to add these to a group because I forgot. So I'll call these synths, and I'll put these in a group called effects. So now that I have everything in a group, I'm going to go to my mix window because it's just easier for me to see everything. And I'm going to work on this a little bit more to try to make it sound like the original mix. So I'm going to select a region and set it on loop playback so I don't have to keep hearing it from the beginning. So if you have tracks in a group and you don't want them to move together, if you hold down Control and then move the fader, you can move it by itself, and that's pretty helpful to know. So it sounds like the guitars are a little bit brighter in the original mix, so I think I'm going to accomplish that in my mix by adding a EQ. And my favorite EQ to add is Neutron. It's a dynamic EQ, and it can do a lot of other things as well. So this is Neutron, and now I'm going to play the song and start EQing a little bit. All right, so I think that sounds a little bit closer to the original. I'm just going to open up my limiter and make sure my levels are still good. All right, so I like how that sounds. So my next step is going to be selecting all of my sub bus mix or my aux tracks, and then I'm going to route those to another aux track. So same process, holding Option Shift, new track, make sure stereo aux is selected, and we'll name this beat. And so now I'm going to move this aux track over here just because that's where I want it. And now we have all of our aux tracks routed to this aux track. So let me show you what I mean. So that's all I have for this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful, and if you have any questions or requests for future videos, leave them in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks.